Welcome to Esoterica, the podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schultz.
And I'm Aaron Christian.
And we are here today with singer-songwriter Stephen Clair. Welcome to our show.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So the first question we usually ask our guests is it's the obvious one. How has the pandemic been impacting your life?
How has it not? I did more yard work this year than I've done in 10 years. It's I'm sure everybody has said it at this point. It's a roller coaster. What's really funny is like there can be those almost whole days where you forget that it's even happening, and then all of a sudden it will dawn on you like, oh yeah, I can't go do that. But it's mixed. Of course, being a musician and kind of just loving playing live shows, there was that jolt in the beginning, but also by being a musician, after a little while you start to realize, and I've heard this from other musicians I know, they're like, being home alone is kind of fun, and kind of satisfying, or can be in and of itself, writing songs, tinkering all day long, listening to music. So it's been a total mixed bag, you guys,
It was funny. I was listening to, this morning, I was listening to your song, Welcome to the World Now, which you released back in April.
Back when we thought it was almost over.
Right? I know. Here we are 5 months later, and the song...
Let's just get through April and we'll be good. Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, we were working up until almost the end of March. We have regular jobs, but we've been unemployed since then.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. So fortunately for you, you were able to complete recording of your new album before everything went sideways.
Yeah, it's not like we planned it. We weren't like, oh, let's get this done. There's going to be an apocalypse. That just happens to be when we recorded. Yeah, and it worked out really well. We had tracked the basics in January, and I had gone back and overdubbed guitars and vocals, and we did backing vocals all in the month of February. And then we started to mix, and I'd say the last third of mixing the album was done remotely, which ended up working out really cool. Like my engineer, I can't even remember what this software was that he used, where he could share the mix with me through my computer while we talked. So yeah, we just kind of like slid into wrapping up as we converged with
at the
end of life as we knew it.
So your new album is called The Small Hours, and that's set to be released on the 18th
of September. Yeah.
Awesome. So what we wanted to do, since we had the opportunity to talk to you, is talk a little bit about the album and some of the and just kind of go through track by track.
Okay.
So your first song is Come Down. What was some of the creative process behind writing this song?
Okay. Are people going to get to hear the track? Are you going to play parts of the tracks? Or
yeah, we told your publicist we usually play a 20-second clip.
Okay. So well, let's see. One of the, I mean, as an exercise in writing, as far as the lyrics are concerned, one of the things that's really fun about that song is that the verses are written in, each of the three verses are written in a way, or four verses, where the first line is one word, and the next line is that word plus another word, and the next line is those two words plus another word. So I keep adding a word on, to the end of that phrase, which is interesting because it reveals itself over time, but also the meaning can change. And that was a really fun aspect of that kind of writing. um, I like to give myself uh, sort of specific rules, or when it comes to writing songs, just push myself in different directions. Um, and that's a rule that was given to me by another songwriter who teaches songwriting. I also teach songwriting classes, um, which is super fun and super rewarding, and we can talk about that too if you want. So that's how the verses are assembled. And then the other thing that it's that song is like I don't know. It ended up at the beginning of the album just because of its like snappy little pace,
Coming in
um,
strong.
right, yeah. But it also like it gives you a sense of the sound of the record too, I think, because the whole one of the things that I set out to do, and I think we did a really good job of, was capturing this particular trio, myself and Daria Grace, the bass player, and Aaron Latos, the drummer, um, who they both played on the last record. And after the last record, most of the gigging and most of the touring that we did was as a trio just for economy's sake. But I also really like trios. So we had just become this lean, mean fighting machine as a trio. So I really wanted to capture that, and kind of all that I thought we were capable of um, on a record. So I kept, the record is concise in that way, that it's this trio playing this hodgepodge or variety of songs that I'd written, in the last half of 2019. Um, so I think that's also it's a strength of this song, and it's a strength of the record, that it's all kind of um, built around, or presented by this trio sound.
Mhm.
Um, even where there are additional guitar tracks overdubbed, there's still this sort of like the core sound of those drums being played by that drummer and that bass being played by that bass player, and there's this like Fender Telecaster sound that I play that's pretty much throughout the record.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like those are the threads, I guess, that go through the whole record. Um,
Yeah, I enjoyed that. There's a lot of variation in the songs, but you definitely, when you listen to them, like this is an album. They're all
hmm,
related to each other.
good, good.
The second track is this thing on social media we're talking about.
We are. We are. I have pretty mixed feelings about social media, or just a digital life, the digital life, and our relationship to that stuff, or dependence on that stuff. And it comes up again, and like there's always like lately there's been like a song, an album, that deals with that in some way. I had another song 2 records ago called Typing Tipsy, which was about observing somebody at a rock concert who spent the whole time at the concert just like typing on her phone, and never really like looking up. And that's a very real phenomenon. um, and So anyway, this song is this thing on is about characters that we all are familiar with, and who represent this sort of like this Jekyll and Hyde thing that comes out in certain people when it comes to like the way they comport themselves on social media, or the way they, you know, the things that they say on social media that maybe they should have slept on first. Um,
Right.
and then that contrasted with the way they might behave or be when you see them on the street, and almost as though nothing happened, or they have no awareness of it. So anyway, that I find perplexing and troubling, and it rears its head on this song. It's pretty much the focal point of the song.
Yeah, the social discourse.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of a ripping, kind of, you know, post-punk, pop-punk kind of, I don't know, thing. Just the style and vibe of that, you know, kind of
Definitely.
kick it out.
And it's funny because, you know, just here we are talking about, and you know, like I share your thought with how people tend to utilize social media, and here we are in a time where suddenly social media is the
It's
only
all we've got. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
and there's an opportunity, but I'm afraid
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
probably won't
Yeah.
take.
No, I'll say to that, you know, as a parent, you know, I have, you know, misgivings about like our kids' relationships to their phones, but at the same time, since mid-March, it's been like their refuge. It's been their way to be connected to their peers and their friends. So like kind of living in certain circumstances can completely change the way you think about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm a parent as well and a scoutmaster, and I always say to the scouts, because we used to not allow phones on camping trips, but it's like a tool, and like any other tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's just you got to be responsible,
Right.
and maybe adults need to learn that a little more.
Right.
And actually, the next track, Dorothy,
Mm.
opens up. There's a line, drinking with my phone.
Right.
Along the same theme.
See, these songs go together more than I realized. Yeah. So Dorothy is the song on the album that really pleasantly surprised me in so many ways. And it has a vibe and a style that I hadn't really like written in or put across on an album before, and it feels really, really good. It's a, you know, it's a bossa nova, the rhythm of it, and it tends to use some jazzier chords than than is typical for me in my own songwriting. So it has a pretty great flavor in this atmosphere, this vibe. And it's got more acoustic guitar on it probably than any other track on the record. And like when we sent the record out to people, you know, we suggested certain tracks. This was not a track we suggested, but it's a track that's really proving to have resonated with people, or it is resonating with people, and I've also found that in performing it, like people want to talk about that song after I've played it, or they want to hear that song again. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, fans. It sounds like they'll be excited that this has found a home on an album.
Right. Yeah.
And all right, so the next song is a song about chicken love.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So, was there a particular chicken that inspired this, or?
No. Maybe not. Just the idea of you got to have a chicken song in your catalog, right?
Right.
The inspiration came from all over the place, multiple places. Namely, there's just the very idea of like using chickens as your metaphor. Like I was thinking recently, well, I don't typically write I don't just write love songs or the same fodder, the usual fodder for popular songwriting, if you will. But like, really, that might not be so true, because this is a love song. It's just I've put chickens. I've cast it with chickens. So I just liked working with all the chicken motifs, and like this idea that chickens aren't good flyers. you know, so this chicken who's eyeing up this other chicken, you know, when they decide to take off together, you know, even in the verse, you know, one chicken says to the other, you know, hey, do you feel that breeze? Spread your wings, you know. And so they get lifted up to the rooftops, and then they spend the rest of the song kind of running around the rooftops together, you know, looking down at those fools on the ground. Um, so that's their story. And that comes, the inspiration for that scenario right there at the end of the song where they get away and they're kind of on the run together, comes from a short story by this author Clarice Lispector, who I like, and she literally has a story about a chicken. I think it's called The Chicken, who does exactly that. Who, like, I think the chicken drives everyone crazy, and then the chicken runs away, and it's running around on the rooftops. And I just love that whole image, that scenario, and um, it also feels very human, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the idea that your wings, you have wings, but they don't get you high. It's like
Right.
that really resonated
Right.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
not all of us get to soar with the eagles. Most of us are
Right. Right.
walking around the ground. Also, I don't know if you're a David Lynch fan, but
Huh.
he's got a 15-minute short on Netflix now, where he's a detective grilling a monkey, and the monkey's on the run after a sordid affair with the chicken. So
Oh
it's
wow. I have to check that out.
that clicked in my head.
Mm.
Wow.
Different mood altogether, but you know,
Right.
it's a
Huh.
chicken. The next track on the album, Nobody Knows.
Okay. Grilling a monkey, did you say?
Yes, yeah, he's questioning him about a murder.
Yeah, what was that called again? What did Jack do?
What did Jack do? I
What did
think
Jack
it's called.
do?
Yeah.
Okay. um, Nobody knows. The standout thing in that song on the record for me is and it happened first when I you know presented these songs to my rhythm section folks, um, my band family, um, and we were going through this song when we stumbled upon that thing that happens like right away. Like, so the song starts out very kind of downplayed and simple and quiet, and then two lines into the song there's this outburst, you know, um, where it gets really loud, and I kind of, you know, go for the fences, um, and and then it comes right back down again, and that was really fun. And when we first did that in rehearsal, um, all of our eyes kind of like opened up wide, like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's not even the chorus, and then you get to the chorus, and the chorus is the chorus, and its dynamic level is somewhere in between. But then there are these, then that outburst. I kept calling it the outburst. The outburst happens again midway through each verse, and that kind of becomes the hook in the song. This thing that, like, it's like a jack in the box, you know, it just like pops out. And so it's like a dynamic hook, and that's very, very fun. It was very fun to listen back to. It's very fun to perform. Um, yeah,
I think that's going to be a crowd pleaser, and
Yeah.
someday
yeah.
when we get to
Someday,
that,
when there's a crowd, when there's more than a crowd of two.
right?
Yeah.
And your next track, Marie, was very interesting. So you're singing about Marie Curie.
Right, right.
What inspired you to write about Marie Curie?
I can't even remember, other than I must have read something about her. Um, so then I just decided to go deeper, um, and also just like she's a, you know, a powerful woman, you know, um, and I decided to write it. And this is where, you know, you take some poetic license when you do this sort of thing. Like, I did real research, and at the same time took took it upon myself to write the song from the point of view of her husband, you know, who's also a scientist, a renowned scientist. Um, uh, and it was just, and it's one of two or three tracks that kind of go into this minor kind of noirish kind of vibe that show up in different points in the record. And that's part of the reason why I landed on the Small Hours title, because as I looked at the group of songs, as disparate as they are, increasingly I kind of like started to think about them as like either happening in those quiet hours, you know, late at night, early in the morning, or being thought about, or kind of worked over, you know, in that time. So that kind of became the thing for me that all the songs could identify with that kind of place. Lots of shadows, minor key. So yeah, so Marie is, you know, and it's also, Marie has a ton of words, and you know, and it's like, kind of almost like a mantra or something. This kind of like list of things, and oh, another thing that happens in the outro of that song, like talking about the trio and the sort of potency of the trio that I really like is that it's very easy to kind of organically come way down and pull back and be kind of quiet and then just like explode. And because this is sort of like a mid-tempo kind of relentless minor moody thing, and then in the outro it goes a little crazy horse almost. It goes a little like bombastic. So like the outro in that song is another one of my favorite moments on the record.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I did to get that I think was really effective is I asked these guys, the other players, to, when we went into the studio to track their parts, to track the bass and drums, I asked them to play as though I wasn't going to be doing any overdubs. Like, just play, like fill up the space, play as if we're playing live. And they really did that, and I think we captured that in these songs.
Yeah, that energy definitely comes through. Your next song, "A Pig in a Poke." Now, I'm gonna have to admit, I've used expression before, and I'm familiar with it. I didn't know the history behind it until I was reading the little write-up on the song. Buying something sight unseen. So,
yeah.
is that just an expression you like, or were you looking for a way to work that into something?
I was looking for another animal to write about. I think initially, and that's such a wacky song. You know, I sing it in a falsetto, you know, much of the time, and but it's super groovy. Like, I've had some radio stations say, "No, that's the song I'm going to play," you know. Really. But yeah, it's not a complicated, it's not deep, you know. Like, it's, you know, it's about looking for love in someone, and you thought they were this thing, and it turns out they're not that thing that you thought they were. And that's essentially what A Pig in a Poke is.
Yeah.
So it's this weird contrast of like singing that kind of song with typical everyday language for that kind of a song, and then yelping out "pig in a poke" as the chorus.
It's got almost a Talking Heads feel.
Yeah, it has that little kind of funky it's a little funky,
Yeah.
I guess.
But again, it's in the family with the rest of the album, which
Yeah.
is
Right, right. And I don't know if that would have been true if I had allowed myself to bring in a, ver a variety of instruments or spend more time on it. The whole idea was to just have the trio in as down and dirty of a fashion play these songs.
Mhm.
Um, and fortunately, I think that is what helps hold it together.
I think that plays in well with the title of the album too, and that theme.
Right,
Three people in the wee hours of the night,
right,
as opposed to a big lush,
right,
overly produced.
right.
It's cool. So the next track, I'm in it, back into the noir feel.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's and yeah, totally. It's that oscillating kind of drenched in vibrato guitar, minor key, um, playing with the tried and true method of like loud, soft, soft, loud, um, and it's I'm in it. It was fun to sing. I'm in it. I'm in it.
Mhm.
Um, it's literally that. It's like about being deep in something that you don't need to be in, but you can't get yourself out of.
Mm.
Um, and it's got a little. It doesn't call attention to itself, but there's a little bit of humor there right from the very beginning. You know, I am standing. I am standing in a phone booth. No, what the heck's the line?
I'm waiting in a phone booth.
I am waiting in a phone booth, you know. And then the next line is just you try and find a phone booth.
I can think of one that I've seen in like maybe the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's something for that, like with the energy of the song, being in a situation that you probably shouldn't, there's some enjoyable aspect of that. Like that's, you feel alive when you're doing
Right.
something that you probably
On the
shouldn't.
edge. Yeah.
You're living.
Right.
And the next song, as we're sitting here talking,
Oh
seems
my God.
timely.
Yeah.
Once again, Hurricane Coming.
Yeah.
So this song it seems like it's particularly about Florida.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unlike a whole lot of the songs, or some of the, many of these are kind of like fictionalized things or things that I dreamt up, whereas Hurricane Coming is drawn very much from a real experience about living through a hurricane, but being in my 20s with a friend, in our early 20s, and, for better or for worse, making the choice to just hang out for the hurricane, you know. Even though everybody else is evacuated, let's just hang out here and see what happens. So it's a little bit like it's kind of a tale of the danger and what was seen, but also kind of choosing to relish it and
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny.
In the way that you can when you're 23.
Yeah. And it was funny listening to it. I kind of made the presumption that this was a personal story because it's the longest track of the album.
Right.
And it definitely has that feel of, this is a true story.
Right. Yeah.
So you weathered the hurricane okay.
Weathered the hurricane. This was Hurricane Andrew in '92, which made a mess out of Florida. And then I was in New Orleans, house sitting with a friend for the summer, being total, hobos. And that hurricane was like heading right toward New Orleans, across the Gulf. And like we went out and like we were paying attention to nothing. And like we went out and walked around the French Quarter, and like there was nobody around, and all of the windows were boarded up. And we went to the grocery store, and there was nothing in the grocery store but like prayer candles and jug wine. So that's what we got. And
That's
we
a
went back to our apartment and like hunkered down, brought in all the plants and all the wildlife from the balcony into the apartment, and like drank that jug of wine. And at some point during the night, the hurricane made land like 50 miles, I don't know how many miles west of New Orleans. And we were saved.
Nice.
But yeah, it was probably not the brightest move, but I got a song out of it.
Yeah, you got a good song out of it, so that's all that matters, right? The next track, Fate. So there's like a trilogy of noir songs on here.
There is. That wasn't even intentional until I looked back, you know.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice that there's 3 of them, and there's a punctuation in between them, which it gives a nice flow.
Yeah.
And this is a catchy song. I like this one.
Oh, good. Yeah, this one is super like ethereal and so fate. The idea of fate becomes personified. You know, fate becomes a character, and it's this. I don't know. It's like fate. What are you doing to me? You know.
She's a nasty mistress.
Right.
And there's a line with the firecracker kids are blowing stuff to bits. Nothing else to do. Like I love that imagery. Like kids, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know about where you are. That seemed to be a hallmark of this summer during the pandemic was
oh my God,
blowing off fireworks.
Yeah. That seemed to be everywhere. Yeah, I saw people posting about that.
Yeah, when you're cooped up with nothing to do, you start blowing things up, I guess.
Yes.
So the closing track on your album, Cheap Date, kind of speaks for itself.
Right. Yeah.
I think we've all been there at some point.
Well, this is told from the perspective like the guy who, or the person who is trying to sell themselves as like, I'm a lot of fun, and you know we can have a good time for nothing, you know. So let's go to an art opening and drink wine and eat grapes and and it's super goofy. I mean, it's a really really playful, raucous, rocking track.
Great closer. I like that energy.
Thanks. And yeah, and there's a goofy video that will go with that too. So.
Excellent. You guys are good. Actually, it reminded me. My first girlfriend was she went to Mass Art and was having an art opening of her photography, and that was the thing. We had to convince her to have wine so people would show up. And it's
big time, man.
I'll go look at some pictures. It's okay. Free booze.
Yeah.
Nice. So this is the album, the small album.
That's it. Yeah.
I know.
And I love it. I love it. I'm really, really happy with it. It's the first, and also it's the first record I've ever pressed on vinyl. So there are vinyl copies available as well, and I feel great about that. Like if there was ever a record that I made thus far in my life of making records, this is a fun one to have on vinyl.
Yeah, and I know when I listen to an album, I usually measure how much I like it by whether or not it's a listen in the truck kind of album. And this is definitely one of those. Like I sat down at home to listen to the album before we talked to you, but this is one I enjoy driving around, just having it.
Cool.
And it's dropping the 18th. Now this episode's going to come out the 16th, so this will be out just a couple of days before the album.
Great.
And you're on Bandcamp if people want to download or pick up the vinyl.
Yep. Or if they can spell my name, StephenClair.com.
Excellent. So what, I know it's hard to say because we really don't know when this pandemic is going to end.
Right.
But do you have anything in the works for what's next after the release of the album?
Just ride it into glory, you know. I mean, I'm doing, as part of the promotion for the record, I'm doing a couple of live streamed shows, which I guess will already have happened. You know, there's bound to be more of those. And I'm writing songs, you know. I can't help but write songs. So I love it. So I'll be doing that.
And you mentioned earlier that you're a music teacher too.
I also teach songwriting. So I teach songwriting classes in person when fate allows, and lately online. So since the winter, I've been teaching these 8-9 week songwriting classes over Zoom, and they're so great. I get a lot out of it. The students are adults, and they can be, you know, total beginners, or they can be people who've been writing songs who just need to force themselves to write in a different way, or based on different criteria or rules, or sometimes it's just helpful as a songwriter to have another songwriter, you know, say write this kind of song and these are the parameters. But most of them are, I don't know. There's a mix of like beginners and not beginners, and it doesn't really matter. They don't even all necessarily play an instrument. Most do, but I get students who come in to write songs, and they'll just turn in recordings of them singing the song with no accompaniment, which is fine. There's still plenty to talk about. So those are going great. There's another few starting late September, early October.
Do you think the environment that we're in now with using Zoom and online stuff, do you think that has been helpful with the classes or changed the dynamic?
It's made it possible to stay in business if that's your business. I also teach some guitar lessons, not like I ever did long ago, but I have a handful of students. And I have to say the guitar lessons over Zoom and other music instructors I talk to, we've all been so surprised by how effective those lessons are turning out to be, how focused they are, I mean, a part of the equation is the fact that people have been craving structure during the pandemic, and I think they have the time to practice. So students don't tend to miss lessons. and they're really making strides, which is great. Yeah,
that's encouraging because
it is. It's totally encouraging.
I'm hoping
it's really hard. Whereas counter to that, you know, it's impossible to play music with your students or with other people. Not impossible, but it's pretty hard over the internet. Because of this lag that we're experiencing, you know. So it's a good stopgap.
Something good might come out of this, right?
But the songwriting classes are really well suited for it. You know, they work great. You know, you can have a group of 8 or 10 people on your screen, turns listening to one another's songs and talking about them.
And I would think too, it opens it up to a wider audience. I know when we were talking to Webb Wilder, and he said in every town there's like 12 fans, but with the internet he can get all of those people into the same room, so to speak.
That is true. That's true. Like I had a class this summer where, normally I'd be teaching people who live near me, you know, who can get to where I am or something, you know, and in this class this summer of like 8 people, 6 of them were local and 1 was from the Midwest and another was from down south. And they found out through Instagram. So I'm going to keep posting it on Instagram. You know,
you gotta use the hashtags.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Stephen, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Remind everybody.
I'll check out more of your show. I'll check out more of your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun doing this so far. And we'll remind people to check out your new album, The Small Hours, coming out the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully some point down the road, we'll catch you out on the road.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.